Wow, have you seen two more stunning bikes than what I have in front of me today? So these are two masterpieces from Colnago, the Italian bike manufacturer, and they span about 20 years of carbon fibre development, old versus new. So firstly, we have the C68 launched in 2022, the latest and greatest from the Italian bike brand, and a familiar sight here on Just Ride Bikes. But over here, I have a very, very special bike, the C50, launched way back in 2004, and the successor to the C40. I've never actually ridden a C50 before, so it's definitely a dream come true. I can't wait to see how it compares to my C68. So the idea, quite simple, ride both bikes back to back on the same course, quite a lumpy course, a few hills, some fast descents, and see how they compare. Won't be a time comparison though, different wheels and tyres, so it won't be that fair. But instead, focus on ride quality, handling, and that perceived performance. And find out if a bike at 20 years old is still any good compared to a modern, state-of-the-art carbon race bike. The C50 looks amazing, doesn't it? An absolute icon of the cycling world. Yes, it's showing its age, I guess. That sloping top tube, the lug construction, and the very skinny tube profiles compared to anything modern and aero that's been launched in the last few years. But personally, I love the classic lines of a bike like this. I love the exposed carbon weave on the frame, very popular back in the 2000s when you really want to show it was a carbon fibre product, and they certainly do that with that exposed carbon weave. And despite its age, I reckon it's aged pretty well, personally speaking, helped no doubt by the very modern group set, Shimano Dura-Race 11-speed, mechanical shifting and rim brakes. So a nice way to combine an old frame with a modern group set and nice set of wheels. And this bike, on the scales, without pedals, weighs 7.3 kilograms. Then we have the C68, which brings the C-line bang up to date. After the C50, we had the C59, the first one available with disc brakes, the C60, 64, and then the C68 launched in 2022. And what the C68 represents is a bigger step forward in the long-running C series. Before the C68, each frame had that very distinctive tube and lug appearance. And while this frame is still made in essentially more or less the same way, it has a very different form. The lugs have morphed into these formed sections that create the frame. So the top tube and head tube, the down tube, the head tube, the bottom bracket, the seat tube, and the rear stays made from just 6 pieces in total, allowing the company to refine the weight and the stiffness and also add some aero for the first time. We now have an aero down tube and of course a one-piece carbon fibre handlebar and stem and full internal cable routing with solid sealed bearings in the headset compared to external cables and a regular round handlebar and stem on the old C50. The C68 also moves the game on in terms of disc brake integration and being designed around only electronic group sets. You can't fit a mechanical group set to a bike, so really marks a big step forward or perhaps a step backwards depending on your point of view of electronics and disc brakes. And on the scales, this bike actually weighs 7.3 kilograms, which is the same as the C50. So is that progress or a lack of progress? Well, we have deeper section wheels here, we have hydraulic disc brakes and electronic gears, and we have aero with a handlebar and the shape of a down tube and a fork blade. So in some ways, yes, the same weight, but all the extra improvement. But what actually happens when you go for a ride? I am blown away with how well this bike rides. It's aged really well. Smooth, great handling, quite a poppy, energetic character as well. Clearly not as stiff as a C68 when you're stamping on the pedals, sprinting up climbs. But for cruising along the country lanes at a nice modest speed and power output, it feels just fine. Helped of course by the modern group set, 11-speed Dura-Race, probably the pinnacle of mechanical shifting. It's only really when you're out of saddle you feel it's not as stiff as the C68. It's not a flexy, just not as snappy as that C68. I think it definitely aged better than my 10-year-old Colnago C50 Evo. That feels stiff and harsh compared to modern bikes. But this bike still feels pretty smooth and compliant compared to a modern bike. Now, conditions aren't amazing for riding a beautiful bike like this. The roads are filthy, covered in water and mud. I do feel bad riding in these conditions, but what can I do? Wait for the summer? Not really. And because it's somebody else's bike, I'm not going to push it too hard and risk crashing it. So definitely 60–70% effort and commitment, but it's still more than enough to get a feel for the bike, for how it handles and how it performs. And it's amazing to think back 20 years to what the bike must be like when it first launched. I mean, it feels incredible. Feels so good. What a bike, wow. Colnagos have always had slacker geometry than other race bikes, and that really shows on the descent. It carves corners with such ease and grace. It makes you feel like a riding god. But these rim brakes do take some getting used to, I have to say. It's been a while since I've been on rim brakes, so stopping power isn't as confidence inspiring as the hydraulic disc brakes on my C68. You definitely have to plan ahead a bit more. The smoothness and comfort is good. Quite a bit more feedback through the back wheel than a C68, but narrow versus wide tyres might be a difference there. It's a very refined ride, very quiet. Just a pitter patter of the tyres on the tarmac. It's been well looked after, been well maintained and well loved, this bike, that's for sure. And so onto a C68, and straight away you feel like 20 years of carbon development. The bike feels loads stiffer. When you put the power down, it feels way more responsive. The steering faster, sharper. The whole bike just feels more laser focused. And despite the extra stiffness, easily apparent in the C68 over C50, thanks to wide tyres, in part, this bike is definitely smoother than a C50. Not by a huge margin though. That C50 was surprisingly compliant. But this bike, despite the extra stiffness, is still a very smooth bike. A bike that will look after you on a long ride for sure. Out of saddle, this bike just feels amazing. No flex, not a hint of vagueness at all. Just so direct. The steering is faster as well. Feels way more a race bike than that C50. I like the aero handlebar on this bike as well. Nice shape, nice tops, good reach as well. Riding both bikes back to back has been an interesting experience, and using power meters and heart rate and speed data, it shows that at about 20 miles an hour there's not really much in it. When you push your power and the speed up, the difference becomes really noticeable. Going faster is easier on the newer bike. I do love how the C50 looks though. I think the C68, despite looking more modern, has lost that distinctiveness that made Colnago C bikes so iconic over the years. I love the exposed carbon weave on the C50 as well. The paint job on this bike is a bit boring really, a bit plain, but the C50 looks majestic. It's quite interesting that both bikes weigh the same, 7.2, 7.3 kilos, which shows progress or lack of progress. This bike's aero, disc brakes, electronic gears, so improvements, and it kept the weight down. But Colnago has never been about weight, it's been about reliability and durability over super lightweight. I think that shows in the way C50 still rides so nicely. Well, that's a really interesting experience, and I finally got to ride the C50 and it didn't fail to disappoint. Some people say never meet your heroes. Well, in this case, that wasn't to be proven. So fantastic bikes, but I think I'll stick with the C68 personally. Now, if you see a comparison of a old versus new Colnago Super 6 Evo, similar comparison, check out the video right up here. And don't forget to subscribe by hitting the button right here. But that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again very soon.